Grace, mercy, and peace are yours from God our Father and from our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. There was a man who was born to modest means, but he worked hard his whole life. And because of his hard work, he received the fruit of his labor. He was a wise man, and he invested what he made wisely, and his investments produced even more fruit. He became very wealthy throughout his life, enough to hire all kinds of hired men to increase his operation. This man had 2 sons. The older son performed well at school. He worked hard, he respected authority, he got good grades, he was the star of the basketball team. Everybody loved the man's older son. The older son graduated from high school and enrolled in an agribusiness degree at a university. He wanted to help his father in his family business. The younger son was not so successful. He took his father's wealth for granted. He figured that he was entitled to it since he had been born to it. Because of this, he did not try so hard at school. He did not earn good grades. He did not respect authority. He could not imagine why he should listen to a teacher when he was so well off and the teacher was not. As a result, the younger son became involved with the wrong crowd. He took up drinking and illegal substances. Many times, the younger son was brought to the father's house by the police after having been arrested for petty theft. He had begun stealing in order to fund his alcohol and drug use. Eventually, the younger son thought to himself, you know, my father is pretty wealthy. Why steal from these other people and get caught by the police when I could just take some from him? And so he snuck into his father's study and got the required account numbers and his father's social security numbers and began to slowly siphon money off of his father's accounts and investments. He used it to fund his drug and alcohol habit, and so that he could hang out with his friends. After a while, the father began to notice that he was losing money in his accounts, and after an investigation, he realized that it was his younger son who was taking it all. So one day, he waited in the house to confront his younger son. The younger son came home. The father confronted him. There's money that's disappearing from my accounts. Do you know where it has gone? The younger son knew that he had been caught and backed into a corner. He lashed out at his father in anger. The first thing that came to the son's mind was, I hate you! You are on my back all the time! You are constantly harassing me, constantly telling me how I don't measure up. I wish you were dead! And the younger son stole his father's truck and left. And before his father could change the security on his accounts, the son drained as many of them as he had numbers for. Liquidated them all, cashed it out, and drove as far away from his father as he could get, drove to the other side of the country. He had plenty of money. He rented a place, and he acquired some new friends to go drinking and using with. While he was away from his father, in addition to drinking and illegal substances, he found the delight of fornication. He made use of women for his own pleasure and gratification, and they made use of him for theirs. Until finally the money ran out. And when the money ran out, he was evicted from the place that he was renting, and he had nowhere to go. All of his so-called friends had suddenly abandoned him. No one would give him anything. But while he was living at high on his father's money, he had met a man whom he knew would pay him in cash and provide him with a small place to live. This is what the younger son wanted. This would be ideal. I don't have to pay taxes on it. The government will never know I'm here. The authorities will never find out. My dad will not be able to trace my whereabouts if I just stay with this man. And so the man agreed and hired him. You can live in the cabin in the backyard. backyard. It was a 2-room cabin, kitchen, bedroom. The man paid him a pittance in cash, but the son took it because it was all he had to eat on. He didn't have much clothes anymore, so he kept wearing the same clothes all of the time. There was no shower or bathroom in the cabin where he was staying, and pretty soon he was filthy. The man who had hired him had him do illegal things on his behalf. And the younger son realized, I am risking my life. One of these days, one of these people with whom this fellow is doing business is going to kill me. I am the liaison between him and them. I am risking my life. He is not, and I am getting nothing in return. But the son would not do anything to improve his situation because he didn't want the authorities to know he was there. He didn't want his father to be able to trace his whereabouts. Meanwhile, back at the farm, the father knows that his younger son has been gone for several months now, and he is concerned about his younger son. He inquires with the authorities. The authorities tell him it has been longer than 48 hours since your son has disappeared. It is highly unlikely that we will be able to find him. We will devote what resources we can and will let you know if we find out anything. Of course, the father of the younger son knew what that meant. And so he began to post pictures of his younger son on the internet. He went to his younger son's worthless friends from high school and asked them, do you know where he is? And they had no idea. And the father suspected that even if they did know, they would not tell him. The father eventually engaged the services of a private investigator. And the private investigator demanded that he be paid a retainer and that the father pay all of the expenses associated with the investigation. The father gave the private investigator all of the information that he had, everything that he could glean from anybody that he had talked to. People at the elevator, people at the cafe. And the private investor took that information and began his investigation. For 5 years, the father paid this man a retainer. For 5 years, he paid all of the expenses that the private investigator accumulated while looking for his younger son. The father began draining his remaining resources. He had already had to lay off 90% of his workforce, and now he was laying off more of them in order to fund the search for his son. But finally, the private investigator tracked down the younger son and gave his father the address. Here's where your son is staying. If you go to this address, you need to look for your son in the cabin behind the main house. That is where you will find him. The father immediately packed his bags, got in a truck, and drove across the country. Had to stay at hotels, had to pay for the gas, but he was bound and determined to find his younger son. When he finally pulled up in front of the house, he went up and knocked on the door, and no one answered. But remembering that his son would be in the cabin out back, the father went around the house, went up to the cabin, and knocked on the door, and no one was there. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so the father sat down to wait in front of that cabin for his son to come home. He waited all night. It was 5:30 in the morning before his son finally came home. The dawn was beginning to break, and the son came around the main house into the backyard to the cabin, and he saw his father sitting there. And the son froze in place because he did not know what his father was doing there. Is he here to berate me some more? Is he here to have me arrested? He could have me turned over to the authorities. I could go to jail for a very long time. But he sat there rooted to the place. He didn't know what to do. He didn't want to run away. The father looked up and saw his son and ran across the yard and embraced him. And while the father was embracing his filthy, stinking younger son, who didn't even look like himself anymore, the son was thinking to himself, well, if he's embracing me, you know, the hired men that work for my father have decent lives. They have a better life than I do. What am I doing? I will say to my father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. And then the son planned to beg his father to hire him. And so the son choked it out to his father. I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But before the son could even utter the words to beg for a position on his father's place, the father took him, put him in the truck, and headed home with him. They bought new clothes for him on the way, got him cleaned up in the hotel, and when they got back home, he took his son to the doctor. And he wanted to hear everything that his son had been doing on the drive home. They certainly had plenty of time to talk. And the son poured out to him everything that he had done and everything that had happened to him. The son held nothing back, and the father listened to it all. And after seeing the doctor, they got the son home, and the father was so excited that his younger son was home, he called up all the relation. He had them come over. The relation was so astounded that after all these years, he had found his younger son. They dropped everything they had and ran over to the house. And before you knew it, they were getting steaks out of the freezer. They were grilling, and a celebration was going on. Needless to say, the hired men were deeply concerned about the whole situation. About 95% of them had been laid off because of this younger son, and now he's back. What's going to happen to the rest of us now that he's here? And so the hired men began to talk. And the duties of one of the hired men required him to go over to the next county where the older son was working in the field. And because the hired man was so nervous about his future on the place, he decided to feel the older son out. Do you know that your father has found your younger son? He's all home with the relatives, and they're all excited. Your father has announced to everybody that your brother was dead and is alive again, and he was lost and is found. And even though the older brother knew he should not do this in front of the hired help, he lost his temper. He was angry that his father was doing this. And the hired man was like, whoa, what's going on here? And then there was talk amongst the hired men. And eventually word got back to the father. And so the father got the truck and drove to the next county to talk to his older son. He got out of the truck, and before he could say anything to his older son lost it. How dare you, Dad? Do you not know what has happened to you? Do you not know we're on the brink of bankruptcy for this worthless son of yours? He has squandered your life in reckless living. Who knows what kind of disease he's got? And you welcome him home like nothing is wrong. You make him your son again. You treat him like you treated him before. What's he going to do to us now? Don't you know I can't even show my face in public anymore? Go down to the cafe in the elevator, everybody starts whispering about me because it's my dad who has spent the family fortune over somebody who's worthless. Don't you know they think you're a fool? Don't you know how this has hurt Mom, how it's hurt me? And you're having this big party down there. When did you ever have a party for me? The father said to the older son, my son, everything I have is yours, and you are always with me. But it was right to celebrate and be glad. For this your brother was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and is found. In the name of Jesus.